Guys, welcome to another CEOism podcast, author edition. Today we have Bruce Kasanoff with us. He is a ghostwriter at Kasanoff Ghostwriting. Very interesting guy. We had a nice preliminary conversation, if I can call it that way. Bruce, can you introduce yourself? Tell us what you're into nowadays.
Sure. Thank you, Charles. I'm a social media ghostwriter. I work with about a dozen entrepreneurs every week, the same entrepreneurs, and we focus on what matters most. And I help them share that with the network, the world, everyone. So that's what I do.
Is the main social media LinkedIn?
It's LinkedIn, although some people have, the smart ones have a private mailing list that they
Yeah.
update people on. And so that's the best medium. But yeah, sure, LinkedIn is probably dominant right now.
Quite bullish on LinkedIn. I never thought I'd be, I'm Gen 93 and us, it was Facebook, then Insta. Facebook became uncool pretty quickly.
Right.
And finally, Twitter. I'm still bullish on Elon's Twitter, but LinkedIn, I discovered it was a pretty nice place to learn about business, study organization, decorticate organizations, who's working in
Mhm.
what position. It's also the biggest professional database. So I'm publishing quite a lot of content there. I was quite conflicted lately as per what platform to choose for my newsletter. There's Beehive that's trending nowadays, but in my case, it's been Substack.
Yeah, me
Substack,
too.
I'm quite
Yeah.
bullish on them. They have the newsletter, they're developing the podcast feature, and they also have some kind of competitor of Twitter, right? The notes.
Notes. Yeah. Yeah.
So is that what you're using? Is that what you recommend?
Well, so to give you a sense, full disclosure. So my Mountain Minute newsletter on LinkedIn has something like 175,000 subscribers. My Bend Reality is my newsletter on Substack. It has 2,000. So, Substack for me still is a work in progress. I love the concept. I haven't, because I don't have a paid newsletter, it's it's not a setup, you know, that's really the people who are thriving on Substack are either being paid by Substack or they have a paid newsletter. And so, I don't like to charge for information, although occasionally I do.
Right. I'm still conflicted on it. Although I do believe in the Patreon model type of, I do think it's a
Sure.
future of content. If you love someone's content and if you've got value from them, they need to have some kind of ladder of offers, but most people don't. And sometimes I find myself buying people's product just to encourage them, just because I love them. For example,
Sure.
Elon's Twitter Blue. It's like free money, just take it. You've added value to me. Um, so that's interesting, but yeah, not too bullish on it either. I think I'd rather just give content, and I don't know, I might have a variety of offers. So either join my free mastermind and you can upgrade, or use my DFY service, for example, or if you know someone great that's for hire. How would
Well,
you
so you
suggest?
asked you asked what I was most interested in before, and after I told you what I did, what I'm really interested now is community. So
Right.
I'd rather have people pay a portion of the cost to keep a community going than pay for me to sit there in a room by myself and create something.
Right.
So that's where I'm going.
Yeah, my mastermind, which I think could be my community, I have this free version, which I onboard everyone to just give them a taste. And if they
Mhm.
want to mingle with high quality characters, then they'll have to pay. So that's kind of my funnel. I'm still conflicted as per where to have my community, because it's not only these monthly Zoom meetings, for example, slash Google Meets. I also want an instant chat. And I've been using Slack. Obviously, it's not Microsoft Team. I think it would either be Slack or Discord. What would you use to build your community?
Well, so I'm conflicted in here. So I'm involved in a couple of other people's communities that use WhatsApp, and
Okay.
I find it overwhelming
Yes,
a
me
lot of
too.
times. So I think one of the challenges is whatever you do, you think is the most important thing in the world to other people, and it's almost never is. And so I just think there has to be some constraints on I actually signed up. I won't name it because I'm saying a negative thing, but I signed up for a 5-week course that is basically is a community, and it was like a fire hose in my face. It's just all of a sudden I'm getting pinged all the time on my phone, and I don't want that. I mean, I'd love to be able to sit there and have an hour a week or maybe a side meeting and connect with people deeply, but I didn't sign up for more distractions, and so I think that's the hard part is I love the model of you can do something virtual. Ideally you can do something face to face. You pick the ones that you want to go to. If I'm interested in this little how to say a channel, as opposed to the whole thing, then I go to the channels. And so I don't think it's the platform. I think it's more a philosophy. I mean, I'll give you a great book to read if you're interested, or anybody else is. Charles Vogel, Vogl, wrote 10 years ago The Art of Community. He's a friend of mine, and it's very useful in terms of how do you structure a community? How do you make it something like what happens when you're in? Where are the boundaries? It's much more important than the technology.
Right. I guess it's the models behind it. And one chat for everyone. Yes, fire holes. I think, me, since my masterminds are 4 members per group, I think I'd create like just one group for this little mastermind. And if they find, let's say that I have you in my mastermind, if you find that this mastermind is too low quality, I think choosing the members and having members in similar situations to you is the right thing to do. Let's say that I place you with 20-year-old, right? He's really successful, just raised 10 million, but I don't think you'd relate much to him.
Right.
So it's all about like the other members. The other question I have for you, because the beauty of community is that people contribute to it. It's somewhat self-sustaining. How do you make sure that, let's say that I have you, Bruce, in my mastermind, how do I make sure that you self-start stuff in the mastermind and you refer me members or you refer me ideas? How do I make sure that you participate?
Well, I think so. For example, one of the communities I was a part of in the last 6 months, I rebelled. Well, I'll give you an example. We had to write a 1,500 word essay why we wanted to be part of it, and we had some prompts, whatnot. So I was first invited to join that community in 2015. I was invited during COVID. I said no both times. It seemed like I do not want to do this. This is like going to school. And then 6 months ago, I was invited a third time, and I just instantly said yes. I wrote the essay that evening. So I think there's an element of when you're ready, you'll do whatever it is. And I think there has to be some sort of a hurdle or a qualification, because otherwise it's very inefficient. And the odds that people are not going to mesh or will have different standards, like to your point, the example you just gave, I don't want to, this sounds obnoxious, but I don't want to sit there and say, okay, well, you know a lot about whatever you did that you raised $10 million, but you don't necessarily know, we don't have shared context. And so, you want some degree of, I mean, I've shared context with people who are, 40 years younger than me because we have a similar mindset. It just has to be some common bond. And sometimes it's just who you know, and sometimes you make people go through, but that's part of what I was saying earlier with Charles' book and what it takes to have what is it that binds you together? As long as you have something, and if you're the gatekeeper or the steward of the community, then you're responsible for it. So that's your responsibility to make sure that happens.
Right. I had the podcast response yesterday via email that, maybe irritated me. So it's like, I reach out. So my podcast funnel to have pods guests on the pod is first, it's my brain. So I create the campaign, and then I have an algorithm kind of classifying people to see who I would send the outreach to, right? So you could call it semi-automatic, hybrid between human and bot. And then there's people every now and then, a lot of people from Europe that still have this mentality, but I mean, it's somewhat normal. It's like a human slash ego mechanism. They're like, how did you get to know me? You know, or what made you reach out to me? And then when I'm honest about it, because I could lie and tell them like, look, I did the research and all of that, they're like, yeah. And I was quite direct in my response. I said like, welcome to the AI age, you know. So I use part robots to reach out to you, and this is not really important. The importance is like our first conversation or pre-interview, if you want, to see if we're a good fit. Do you think I was too hard there? Like, do they have are they like rightfully concerned? Are they not embracing like algorithms classifying them, or should I modify my approach to be way more personalized in my outreach?
Well, so I wrote a book called Making It Personal, so I'm a little biased. I do think personal is good. That said, it really depends on, do you have the resources to get as many people as you want? And does this work for you or not? So I wouldn't say, I mean, I didn't find your outreach to me to be problematic at all. So, I don't know how other people react, but
Yeah.
it's fine for
Well,
me.
I'm gonna tell you that I had like very famous people on the pod as well, and my outreach campaigns was I listened to you on this other podcast, and that always works. I also think that if people in that case, I think it's like overinflated ego and deflated brain, you know, because they could just have seen my LinkedIn profile and see the type of guy I am, which is like
Yeah.
a smart dude that's fun to talk to.
Well, I think the thing you have to keep in mind is that how many negative people and robots and whatever you want to call it are out there today. I mean,
Yeah.
I get constant daily, as everybody else does, efforts to scam me. So
Yeah.
you get, it's not paranoid to think everyone's out to get you if everyone's out to get you. So you got to be
Yeah.
careful today.
Yeah, I wrote a somewhat controversial post on that today. I get these phishing emails every now and then, but they're somewhat easy to spot. I think it'll be scary when AI and AGI will come in the mix, which is my next question, and we'll jump in the topic of copywriting straight up. I'd like to start my own self-publishing agency, and I want to use GPT to write the book. So to make some kind of compilation of all my LinkedIn posts, for example, and do it Tools of Titan or Naval's Almanac style, which is like quotes of topics. What do you think about that idea, and how does that measure vs hyper personalized ghostwriting like you do?
Well, so I think the big challenge is that things like ChatGPT make it so easy to generate content. So there's going to be a content explosion, and the question is, who has the time to read all that stuff that now we can write in great volumes? I think there's going to be a backlash the other way, and someone will pay more for, give me 700 words. That's all I need to know this year, period. And so people are a little overexcited, I think, about like I'll tell you my favorite ChatGPT use, and that is after I have an interaction with ChatGPT, I ask it to write a haiku, which is 3 lines to summarize. It's really good at that, and that's adding value. Like, okay, here's this little piece, and I sometimes will put it at the end of something I write. It's better than I am at that, so use that. But the other stuff, I mean, like if you just said, for example, you use that to send it to a potential guest or someone you wanted to meet, say, here's anything you want to know about me. Here's some of the, highlights. Great use. But am I going to pay $20 to read the ChatGPT version of your book? I don't know, And as you know, the hardest part is always selling a book, not writing a book.
Right. And writing a book is pretty goddamn hard. So that gives a testimony of how hard it is to have a successful book out there. Who are your favorite type of clients to work with in terms of ghostwriting? Is it like a genre of book? Is it like an entrepreneur type of author? Like who do you like working with?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm never writing a book. I'm always writing social media. Uh, my
Right, you
clients
told me
tend to
that.
be, yeah, they tend to be private businesses. They tend to have 500 or less employees. I'd say most have less than 125 employees. Basically, my space is, if you have a marketing department, you still don't let the marketing department tell you what you can say and when you can say it, and that you have to be on brand. And so, like, I always write with the CEO, founder, owner, and nobody else. Nobody else edits. Nobody else is involved. Nobody else said, "Oh, let's guess what Dave wants to write this week." It's always one on one, the two of us. And as you get bigger, I mean, I've had a few of the biggest entrepreneurs in the world, and it always ultimately gets down to like, no, 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 you can't write that because we're doing this big campaign. And so I stay fairly small. I mean, some of my clients have raised 150 million dollars, but they still only have a couple hundred employees. So I like that space a lot.
And what are their goals? Is it PR? Is it growth? Is it ROI?
No, none of those things. It's although sometimes a few of them come with those goals. It's always, my network is getting bigger and bigger. I used to talk to everybody in my company personally every day. Now I don't even know who some of them are. So I want my employees, I want my investors, I want my customers, I want the communities in which we have offices, I want my friends, I want sometimes even my family. I want them to have a window. They can't read my mind, so I want them to have a window into what I'm thinking, what I'm doing, and therefore they can be participatory, they can be excited, they can connect with me, they can reach out if they need help, they can reach out if they want to help me. And it's that motivation more than anything else. And by the way, those people far and away do better on social media than the people who are saying, I want ROI and let's measure how we're doing. Because that
So
gets too calculated.
yeah, is their strategy authentic from the get-go, Elon Musk style, no filter? Because that's mine, and I feel that I might offend people sometimes. Not that I give a crap, but it's just that I feel that honesty is always number one value. Obviously,
Right.
you need to say things in a nice way. The goal is not to hurt people, but
Right.
is that the best philosophy to have when putting content out there?
Yeah. So I kind of serve that role that you just said, which is that uh, if we were talking, you're my client, we'd be talking. So I get from you how you really feel, what you really care about. You might say to me the first time, like, screw those assholes, and and I'm like, okay, great, I understand what you want to say, but do I have to say assholes? And if you say yes, okay, but usually after people finish telling me, they they've calmed down a notch. They say, look, I don't care as long as you get across that I don't think anything about their strategy makes sense. Otherwise, now you make it a little prettier. So I think a lot of people, well, I have a few entrepreneurs that you could tell if they did the post by themselves versus they did it with me. It's just a little bit, um, the ones that happen with me recognize that other people have a reality too. And it's not just my reality. I mean, the biggest problem I have with someone like Elon Musk is not that he's outspoken or anything, it's that he's losing touch with the fact that there's other people in the world. And so for example, with Twitter, what like the shit on me with Twitter was, he he took all these people who worked at Twitter and treated them worse than anybody. I don't care if you're this exploitive, you know, slave owner in the 1800s. He treated those people horribly, and there's no excuse for that. Just no. And by the way, I don't mean to belittle, because slavery was horrible and inexcusable, but it just it's incomprehensible to me why you have to treat people horribly in order to be yourself. You don't. There's no
Yeah.
excuse for that.
I guess stress and humongous piles of stress. And I mean, as a business owner that had various employees myself, I also not have resentment, but I feel that employees most of the time are treating us business owners as their own slave, you know, like give me that payroll and I don't care like if my performances are there. So I can understand that. But your point, I think what needs to be extracted out of that is that people do not need necessarily a PR department, but they need awareness of what kind of content they put out there and the effect that it has. And if you're a human, if you have a heart, you don't want to release stuff out there with the sole goal. I mean, I don't think it was his goal. I think he wanted to vent out and externalize anger. But when you have that type of platform, you will hurt people when you say these things. And yeah, the lack of awareness, right? Elon just posts whatever he wants. These dumbass memes, you know, for 7 years old, like you can see he's like not really mature, you know.
Right. I'll give you another example. So Salesforce, when they had their big layoffs,
Yeah.
and they completely lacked, there's supposed to be this great brotherhood of people. And oh my God, like the way you found out, as I understand it, that you were laid off was
Yeah.
that your login didn't work anymore. That's how you found out. Like,
Yeah.
that's inhumane. It's just, you know, and so when a company or an entrepreneur gets so big, or anybody, that you just think, I matter, you don't, I'm not going to treat you like a human being. I can't stand that. So.
Right, right. And that's good old PR, I think. Like that's how it was done. And you know, that's where the toxicity of some firms out there, the logic being, you know, don't add fuel on the fire, but actually you're causing the fire by not communicating and treating people like pieces of metal, you know.
Yeah. Well, that becomes the problem. Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
look, the fact is that if and this is always, I mean, I see this with entrepreneurs all the time. This is always you want people to help you grow your company. You want them to pitch in, take risk with you, you know, fight as hard as you're fighting. But do you give that back when times get tough? Do you give them that back, or do you just say, sorry, we don't need you anymore? Because, you know, and a lot of times it's not even like this is a fight for our survival. This is like, well, the board, our investors, is telling us we got to lay off. I had one client like this. He was told in the beginning of COVID, he was the founder, he had to lay off like over 100 people. Their business hadn't gone down yet. The board was just nervous.
Yep.
And it turned out, guess what? Their business never went down. And so the investors panicked, and they were going to like just destroy the livelihoods of 100 plus people
and
for
the
no
founder's
reason.
life also, because it's so hard to do this, you know. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm really turned off by taking external capital sources. But we'll need to do a round two, Bruce, because you're full of wisdom. I also wanted to talk about like your personal life, which seems very much enjoyable, you know, in the mountains, chilling with dogs and the family. So I think that's my ideal life, and that a lot of founders watching you. Where can people find out more about you and your newsletter until then?
Best place, just go to kasanoff.com, Kasanoff, and you can connect to everything I do from there.